Welcome to Insights. I'm Dick Goldberg, and our subject today, well, it's the most common fear or phobia of Americans. It's even ahead of the fear of death. Our subject is stage fright, the fear of public speaking and performing. We'll take a look at what this is all about and hopefully get some ideas on how to cope with it or even, perhaps, overcome it. Our guest is one of the nation's leading experts in this area, Janet Esposito. She's the author of 2 books on stage fright. Her first, In the Spotlight, Overcoming Your Fear of Public Speaking and Performing, has been on the Amazon's bestseller list for 7 years. Her newest book, Getting Over Stage Fright, takes a more holistic approach to the subject. She leads workshops throughout the U.S. and is also a counselor and coach in this area. Welcome, Janet, and thanks for being with us.
Oh, hello, Dick. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Was my open correct? Is this the most common fear in America?
It is. It's been noted that for many, many years, above all other fears, including fear of death, including fear of, people have fears of all sorts of things, and this one always tops the list.
Why? What is it about public speaking?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear of exposure, that people are afraid of just feeling very vulnerable up in front of people. The big fear ultimately is of judgment, fearing that people are going to see things about you, they'll be critical of you in some way, judge you as though you're not good enough, that you're less than. People are very afraid of parts of themselves being seen, and it feels sometimes, that whole, the name of my book is In the Spotlight, the first book, and it feels like people are in the spotlight, that as though they're the center of attention, and that people are looking closely at them, listening closely to them. It feels like they're being scrutinized by people. And many people have a wish for approval, and certainly a wish not to be having disapproval. So there's a lot of fear about just the social consequences if you're not seen in a good light up in front of people, as though, you will not be accepted, you'll be disapproved of, you won't be, seen in a good light.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the issues, too, relate to the ego concerns, which many people have of, your reputation, your image. People want to look good. They don't want to look bad in front of others. And so all of that gets really caught up in this fear.
Would you say there's a direct correlation between insecure people and stage fright?
I would say absolutely no, because actually I'm a therapist as well. I do general therapy with people, and it's interesting in my practice, and I've seen this even for people I know. I've seen people who are far more insecure than some of these people who have a high degree of stage fright. And some of these very insecure people do not have this fear. And oftentimes when I see people who have very high levels of stage fright, they are very confident and secure people in many, many ways. And many people have said to me that in many aspects of life they're doing extremely well, they're very accomplished, very achieved, and yet in this one area, this is where they can't get a handle on this. So I don't think it goes hand in hand.
Why would that be, that you're secure but that this one area gets you?
Well, I think a lot of people who have this fear have a lot of issues around control, of wanting to be in control, to look in control, fear of loss of control. And many times this quality, this personality quality, can make people very highly achieved. In fact, I just had a workshop this past weekend, and it's amazing the caliber of people who have this fear. And I see this time and again in my workshops. Very high-level successful people, vice presidents of companies and marketing people, salespeople. A physician was here in the workshop. All sorts of people who can have this fear, and again can be very secure people in many ways, very confident people. But these are people who have a strong need to be in control. And when you're in a group situation and you are feeling, like you're put in front of people, there can be a feeling of loss of control. Many times when people are in one-on-one interactions or small group interactions, there is far less fear because it feels like you're more in control. You're more in control of directing the conversation. Actually, the other thing that oftentimes sets this off, too, is this one-way kind of communication, which feels very unnatural, that you're talking to people or at people without people having a natural interaction and flow of conversation. and it also feels very formal.
Yeah.
So when things feel less formal, they feel more casual, and there's a back and forth communication rather than a monologue, then people tend to feel more at ease. It feels more natural, and they also feel more in control.
Does perfectionism fit here?
It oftentimes is a factor. In fact, I oftentimes ask that question in my workshops, how many of you feel this, perfectionist or relate to this perfectionist kind of tendency?
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of people do. Not all do, but the majority do. And a lot of times it is when you get up in front of people, there's a feeling like the stakes are higher.
Mm-hmm.
You have sort of a longer place to fall if you make a mistake. It's more visible to more people. And many people get into this feeling of having to get it right, do it right, say it right, and pressure themselves. There's a tremendous sense of pressure that they put on themselves.
Well, if someone's facing this and they do have stage fright, what are the worst things they can do that people tend to do to make it awful?
The worst things they can do to make it what?
A bad experience.
Oh, to make it a bad experience for themselves?
Yes.
Yeah, well, one of the things that happens very commonly is when people have the feelings of fear come up inside of them, the sensations in their body, maybe a pit in their stomach, and their heart is racing, they're sweating or shaking or whatever, even in anticipation of the situation. Many people get very, very frightened by the feelings and sensations and hate the feelings and sensations. Mm-hmm. So there's a natural response to try to fight this off or try to control what's happening inside of you, or to try to run the other way and get out of the situation and even avoid the situation if at all possible. And that actually, all of those reactions make it worse. It fuels the fear. It actually makes you feel like you're in an emergency situation or something terrible is going to happen to you. Things get extremely distorted when you react really strongly like that to the fear itself. I say, in my book that people come to fear the fear itself, and then they add more and more fuel to the fire of what's initially happening inside of them. So it's almost counterintuitive, but what actually one needs to do, instead of fighting it or trying to run away from it or trying to control or resist it, is to actually accept what's going on inside of you and to meet the experience in a way to help yourself feel safer, that reminding yourself you're not in danger. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes what helps people is to imagine that the fear and anxiety go in waves, mm-hmm. and you have to ride the wave. You have to ride the wave, and it will start to increase. And then if you don't fuel it more and more and more by your negative reactions to it, it actually starts to decrease on its own.
Before we get to all your ideas, we're not going to get all, but maybe a few tips. Are there people who are famous, who are accomplished, that we have all heard of, who have or do suffer from this?
Well, yes, and actually some performers come immediately to mind. Carly Simon and Barbra Streisand have been known to have this fear. And actually the performing fear and public speaking fear are extremely similar. I've worked with both groups, and there's so much commonality, the feelings, the sensations, the thought patterns. And it's interesting, people like, we'll take Barbra Streisand, for instance. She is so accomplished and so talented, and many people would think, well, why would she have this kind of fear when she does so well? And shouldn't people who do less well have more of a fear than someone who's so talented? Yeah. But oftentimes, again, when people are good at what they do, there is a sense of feeling like you have to outdo yourself, that you have to keep, people expect things of you, which is exactly the other thing that fuels this fear, is the feeling of expectation that people have. So sometimes the better you are, it can make you feel like people expect more and more and more of you.
I wonder if she's particularly hard on herself, or if that's a common trait.
Well, yes. People actually, she has also admitted to perfectionism as one of her qualities. And yes, often anyone who's perfectionistic or even just, having this fear, typically people are very hard on themselves. And I see it in my workshop all the time, including this past weekend. People are very, very hard on themselves and have a certain standard that they feel they have to meet. So their own self-expectation as well as what they perceive others are expecting of them.
When do people need help with this? When is it really a problem in their lives?
Well, you kind of know when it goes beyond just the normal nervousness or the jitters or the butterflies. Oftentimes with that kind of low-level fear, which is extremely common to have some, degree of nervousness. But with that kind of thing, it's not so strong. It doesn't feel like it takes over your body or your mind. It's just there. And typically what will happen for people of that is if you just prepare and you rehearse and you just kind of know that your material, that will ease that kind of anxiety tremendously. And then once you get into it, you're fine. Now, people who have a higher level will find that no matter how prepared they are, they know their content left and right, up and down, but that is not enough. It's just the fear goes well beyond just knowing your material. And so also that, so it goes that high, and then you also know if you're avoiding. There's a tremendous amount of avoidance that goes on when people have this fear on a higher level, moderate to high level. So you're finding ways to get out of situations, you're not volunteering for situations, you're holding back. Also, if you have feelings of overwhelm and panic, or, people lose sleep over this, let's say even if people get an email from their boss or something saying, you're going to need to present in a, next month or something. Oftentimes, even that email will trigger tremendous anxiety. Just the minute you find out that you're going to be presenting in the future or performing. This, again, can go with a performer as well. So those are, tips that, this goes beyond just the normal, butterflies related to this.
I wonder if the fear is realistic. In other words, you're very frightened, you have to give a speech. How often do people get up there and they can't do it versus what was I so scared about?
Well, I'd say most often, the great majority of time, people can get through it, no matter how uncomfortable it is. I have heard on occasions that people get so overcome by their fear, and then they're adding to their fear, of course, while they're up there, because they're already feeling afraid, and then they're saying, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, this is bad, I'm not going to be able to do this. And sometimes, they work themselves up to the point where they can't continue or they can't complete. I've heard a few instances where somebody will step in and finish for them or something like that. But I would say that is more the rarity. The more common thing is that no matter how afraid people are, they are able to get up there, they are able to do it. And what's very interesting, and I've seen this so many times over the years of doing the workshop, that no matter how frightened people are feeling internally, it is not evident on the outside in the way they experience it. Many times it's not even visible at all, and if it is visible, it's minimal. There's a sense of maybe tension or some nervousness, but it's not visible, the high level of anxiety that people might be feeling inside. And people are astounded when they discover this. They're like, how can that be, that it's not, that you're not broadcasting it and everybody's seeing it? But it's just the way it is.
If they knew they were going to get through this no matter what, do you think that would greatly reduce all those the sleepless nights before and their pain?
Many people know that on some level, that they will get through this. This is not going to be a life and death situation that they can't get through. But still, there is so much anxiety associated. And I think it's so much a fear of public humiliation, public embarrassment. That's really, it turns out the people with the high-level fear are ultimately afraid that others are going to see their anxiety. And that as soon as they see their anxiety, that somehow they'll lose credibility, they'll lose respect from people, and it'll be a humiliation to them. And so that's ultimately what people are afraid of. Even if they get through it, if they know they can get through it, they're afraid of embarrassing themselves.
Is a bailout here to just say to people, I'm so anxious, I'm so nervous?
Well, I wish that were more culturally acceptable. It just feels like in our culture, somehow being afraid and fearful is not so easily accepted. And when people are in like formal meetings or, they're going around the table doing updates or they're doing a formal presentation, it's a very unusual thing for somebody just to admit, this is how I'm feeling. And I would say if people could admit, listen, I'm just feeling anxious right now, we'll move through it, but I just want to acknowledge that it would help tremendously. Because the other thing that feeds this is the feeling like you have to hide it. Yeah. You have to pretend you're not feeling afraid when you are feeling afraid. And it would release it tremendously if you could admit it.
Is it more acceptable for men or women, or both can't do it?
Well, actually, I have in my workshops just as many men as women, which is interesting because as a therapist, many more women come to therapy. But with this issue, because it impacts career, many people have given up opportunities for career advancement, or it's impacting their, their functioning at the on the job. It's just as common for men and women. And men and women experience it very similarly. I really see no differences in how people experience it. But I think in our culture, men feel even worse in some ways about feeling afraid, because it's like, oh, you're not supposed to feel that way. But I'll tell you, most of the contemporary women I work with feel the same. They feel embarrassed and ashamed of having this fear.
I just wonder if the crowd would be more forgiving of a man or a woman saying that.
It depends on the crowd. I think it depends on the crowd, and possibly more forgiving toward a woman because of our sort of cultural bias that women, it's more acceptable for women to feel these feelings. But even if the crowd would be more accepting, I think both, the man and the woman who is speaking would have a hard time admitting it to the crowd, because it feels very vulnerable, like you're sharing a vulnerability.
You bet. In the time we have left, let's see if we can help those listeners who have this fear, which is most of them. Where do you begin, Janet? What's the most important things to know and work on?
Well, in my second book, I talk about a body, mind, spirit approach and a more holistic approach. So maybe I'll touch on each area very, very briefly.
Sure.
With the body part of your experience, all these feelings surging, all the discomfort in the body, I referenced earlier, and I'm going to reinforce again, that it's extremely important to learn how to respond to whatever symptoms you're having. Because if you react badly to them and you get frightened by your inner experience, it is going to absolutely make it worse. People time and again have said that when they come to accept the fear, accept the anxiety, not make it an enemy, just say, okay, it's here, I'm just going to coexist with it, put it off to the side a little bit, and and just be with it. It makes a huge difference that you're not fighting against this experience inside of yourself. The deep breathing is also extremely helpful. It helps to calm the nervous system. It helps to ground yourself more in the present moment and more in your body.
Can I interrupt here to ask, is this during the performance or before?
Well, first of all, actually it is both. It is both. And it's harder to do it while you're actually speaking. And I try to make people not think of it as a performance, because many times people get, the anxiety is like they have to step up and perform and be on display. But I think of it more as a communication, that when you're up there, you're communicating, you're informing. But it is more challenging while you're up there, because you have to do a lot of different things while you're up there. You're managing, what's going on inside of you. You're handling your content. But people have found that when they are anxious while they're standing up there or sitting in front of the group, going around the table, introducing or whatever they're doing, if they can pause for just a couple seconds, take a breath, and just say to themselves, it's okay, ride the wave, it's okay. Something like that, it actually gets better. Versus if you're up there and you're starting to feel this way and you panic in your mind thinking, I'm in trouble, that will make it worse.
Yeah.
So you have to take that second to just try to ground yourself and make yourself feel safer.
Is this also a way of relaxing your body?
Yeah, absolutely, because then you're not guarded. You're not feeling like you're in danger. You have to make your body feel safer. And even feeling your feet planted on the ground, really feeling steady, the ground is supporting you. Trying to stay in your body. Many times people almost have an out-of-body experience. It's almost like you're disconnected from yourself. If you can try to relax your body a little bit, and your posture, to hold your posture in an open and confident kind of way, even if you're not feeling that way, rather than closing down and kind of having a more frightened, withdrawn kind of posture. Even smiling can help. It can actually give feedback to the mind and body that you're safe. And there's no, you're not under fire here. These are not enemies who are looking at you. So those are a few things with the body. With the mind, I do a lot of discussion about the mind. It's extremely important to work with your mind and begin to discipline your mind and direct your mind to work for you rather than against you. Because when we're in fear and anxiety, our minds come up with all sorts of scary thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what if this happens? What if that happens? Oh my gosh, you know, and kind of catastrophizing things in your mind, thinking terrible things are going to happen. And we distort reality. So we have to work with our minds so that we can see things more clearly, we can ground ourselves in more the reality of the situation, and to talk with ourselves in very supportive and soothing ways. Many people are really, they're speaking with themselves in ways that are very diminishing, and they put themselves down. Oh, you're going to look like an idiot, or this is bad, or that's bad, very self-critical. And we have to stop that. We have to really treat ourselves with kindness and support, and that no matter what. You know, no matter how you do, because a lot of us will just treat ourselves nicely if we do well, and then if we're not doing as well, then we turn against ourselves.
What do you want to say to yourself instead of, oh, I'm blowing it, oh my God, this is going to be terrible?
Well, what I say is, what would you say either to your child or to your best friend? If you were trying, you know, you're coming from love, you're coming from support, you're coming from encouragement, you would say some kind things. You'd say, you know what, I know this isn't so easy, but you're doing okay. Just take it one step at a time, keep going, and you're going to be okay. I'm right here with you. You know, you'd say something that you would say to someone you love. And you know, you don't say things that are undermining to somebody you love. You don't say, oh, you know, you're going to mess up, or this isn't good, or that isn't good, because that is going to fuel not only fear, but also self-doubt. You know, you're going to feel more and more inadequate if you continue to berate yourself that way.
Okay, so we got relax, talk supportively to yourself. What else?
Well, and that's more, again, the mind, directing the mind, and then I'll just move on to the spirit. And with the spirit, it's meant to try to access your highest self, being in your highest. When we're overly concerned about what people are going to think of us, how we're going to look, what our reputation is going to be like with this, then we're in what we call ego concerns. We're very concerned about ourselves. And it's kind of like we're making it all about ourselves, like as though everybody is just, you know, there to critique us or judge us, and we lose connection with our true purpose. So to get back to our true purpose, it's to serve others, it's to give to others, it's to help others, sharing information, inspiration, whatever you're up, even if it's a performer, sharing your talent, so to uplift people. So to get back connected to your true purpose and your higher purpose is to contribute to your fellow human beings rather than as though this is a test or performance every time you get up there, you know, like an exam. You're going to be, you know, evaluated and scored. Also just coming more from the heart, just really trying to care about people. Instead of getting into such a self-protective, guarded mode, like you're always protecting yourself, is to care more about other people, that I want to give to people, I want to help people. And also, the final thing I'll mention related to this is just the control piece. When we have to control things so tightly, it's implying that we do not trust. We do not trust in ourselves, we do not trust in others, we do not trust in our situation. So we have to be able and willing to release the need to have such tight control and trust that everything is going to be okay. And it is. Even if it doesn't go the absolute best it can go, everything turns out okay. And we need to really connect with trusting in that and surrendering, really surrendering the need to control things so tightly.
I don't hear you saying this, but would it help to think, what's the worst that could happen?
It has actually helped many people not to dwell on negatives, but to get realistic. Okay, what is the worst that can happen? I might get embarrassed. I might make a mistake. I might, you know, some people may see my anxiety. And then what? And once people really delve deeply into, like, what is truly the worst case of what would happen, it ultimately comes back to kind of I lose face a little bit, you know, in terms of embarrassment. I lose some sense of, you know, esteem in my own eyes in front of other people. I'm feeling like I wasn't at my best. But nothing tragic happens. You know, even people who've had situations where it's been visible, they've told me they have not lost their job. Actually, people have sometimes gotten promoted in the midst of having this fear.
Why would they get promoted?
Because they have many, many skills. And the public speaking is not a deal breaker for most people, unless you're an absolute, you know, public speaker. If that's your only thing that you're doing, that, yeah, you better be comfortable with public speaking or at least manage it. But if you're doing a job that requires a lot of skills, and then public speaking or updating at meetings or whatever is only a small portion of what you're doing, it's not going to detract from your whole experience at work.
You mentioned practice, you mentioned practice earlier. Is practicing your performance or speech a lot very helpful?
Well, I have seen both cases of under-practicing and over-practicing. And I think having a good amount of practice, like somewhere in the middle, a balanced amount, is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But I have seen people who under-prepare because actually they're too anxious almost to deal with it, so they procrastinate and avoid, and that definitely is not a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that recently even with some people where they actually got more anxious because they were not prepared well enough. And then there are people who go sometimes to the other extreme of over-preparing because they're so anxious. And that actually tends almost to increase the anxiety also because they're dwelling on it too much. They're making it way too big of a deal beyond what the situation warrants. So I think having a healthy amount of practice is a wise thing to do.
We've heard 4 ideas, or 5. Anything to add?
Anything to add?
To what you can do.
Yeah, I would just say to really work on not making this a proving ground for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's ultimately come to accept yourself, self-acceptance, and being who you are, being authentic, being genuine, being able to just step up with who you are and knowing that is good enough. And also being careful not to compare yourself to people. I see this all the time where, people are saying, oh, so-and-so's much better than I am, or he or she is doing so much better, and then feeling worse about yourself. Mm-hmm. So the thing here is not to try to be like anyone else, that you have to be a certain way, just to step up and be who you are and genuine. And that actually is a very powerful way to connect with your audience. Because people, can feel good just connecting with you as a human being, and you don't have to shine while you're up there. So, just trying to allow that to happen. It's challenging, but I think that is a key point.
One silver lining I'm hearing is if you have this problem and then take your advice, it can make you a much happier person in all aspects of your life. If you just learn to accept yourself, you're not perfect, and be real.
Yes. Yeah, and actually people have told me, both from the books and the workshop and the coaching I do, that the tools that I talk about and teach to people apply to all areas of life and across the board, that you can improve your life very much. And it is also about, becoming more mature, because a lot of this fear resides in a childlike feeling. It's almost a regression into a childlike feeling. But when you're more mature, you can see things as they really are. You have perspective. You can take things in stride, not blow them out of proportion. There's a maturity that goes along with that, and that, again, can impact all aspects of life.
I'd like to say to the people listening, if they want to learn more about Janet and her work, they can go to www.performanceanxiety.com. And Janet, I thank you very much for joining us. This is very illuminating.
Oh, thank you, Dick. It was a joy to talk with you today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And I hope you'll join us on the next edition of Insights.